Do you have pests in your garden? Do they try to eat everything you've worked so hard for? I'm right there with you, and yes, they are totally relentless. I'm going to show you how to get rid of them and how we have to think outside the box to get the results we want. So let's dive in. Hey, I'm Karen. How's it growing? I'll be the first one to tell you that gardening is the most rewarding, most fun, and sometimes hardest thing ever. But with the rewards come some struggles. And in my previous video, I showed you about fungus and how to eradicate it and treat it and try to prevent it. But another one of those struggles, especially this time of year, it is June 21st in St. Augustine, Florida, Zone 9B, is pests and how to deal with them, prevent them, get rid of them. And I'm going to show you today how to do that. So the best thing to remember is even when you see those dreaded pests in your garden and all over your precious plants, all is not lost. You can either do what I call a preemptive strike and treat it ahead of time to prevent those things from happening, or you can wait until you see signs of those little critters crawling all over your plants or leaving damage somewhere. This is why I walk my garden daily, usually this time in the morning, to check out what I can harvest, see if anything needs to be watered, and look at the different plants and leaves and see if there's any kind of problem so I can kind of head it off at the pass and treat it before it gets too bad. These are actual plants of mine that have gotten bug damage, and I've had to treat them with something this season. Some show signs of a leaf miner, and some are actually just big chunks chewed out of them. Some are actually sacrificial plants. So how do you know what's eating your plants and what to treat them with? Most times you don't even know unless you really see the actual bug on there, so you kind of have to look for the signs. Sometimes you can't see them unless you come out at night with a light or a black light or something like that and look like kind of like slugs. You can see those at night. Other bugs just hide during the day, and unless you look under the leaves and catch them in the act or see them flying around, you really don't know what is on your plants. So you kind of have to watch for the symptoms and the telltale signs. So sometimes when you see holes and chunks taken out of the leaves of your plants, it's generally going to be some kind of worm or caterpillar. So I try to treat these with the least risky towards the pollinators, the good bugs, and I go with BT. If you follow the directions on the box and mix with water and spray all over your plants, try to do it at dusk when the good pollinators are least active and just spray it all over everything. And that usually will dry and keep, even if you have a little bit of rain, which does wash some of it off, some of it will stay on there. I don't need to usually apply it but once, maybe every 2 weeks if I have an active problem. But normally it takes care of them and knocks everything out as far as the caterpillar and the worm family. And that's a lot of times what the culprits are. Make sure to follow the directions on the bottle and test a small part of your garden before you go spraying if you haven't used it before. Generally won't cause damage if you use it at dusk so that it's not in the high part of the day with the worst part of the sun so it burns your plants. But just test it out, and then if everything works out okay, then do the same treatment with the rest of your plants. What BT does is the worm or caterpillar will eat the plant that's treated with it, and it will make them stop eating and basically die. Another problem that I see in my garden this time of year is when your fruit have little tiny puncture holes on them. And a lot of times it's your tomatoes, your peppers, your squash, can be other things, but this time of year, those are generally the things they go after, especially the tomatoes. These are the baby nymphs that I'm showing you now. These are the dreaded leaf-footed bugs that suck the juice out of your fruits. These are the adult version of it, so you can see what they look like. If you see signs of these, you're either going to have to suck them up with a hand vac. They come out during the day, so you can knock them into a big soapy bucket of water that kills them, or you can spray for them, which is a little more difficult because they're hard shell and they're a little bit harder to kill. But spinosad will take care of these. And again, spray it at dusk because spinosad will injure good pollinators. So if you spray it at dusk when those have gone, and don't spray it directly on the flowers, it will dry, and then by the next morning it will be okay and safe for your bees and your pollinators that'll be out. Slugs are another problem that people have in their garden. These are a problem for people that don't have beds that are raised with legs off the ground. The bottom of the garden bed actually touches the ground, and that they're able to crawl up through the dirt or some other way. But this is a problem you can take care of a few different ways. You can use eggshells in your garden and crumple them up and just sprinkle them everywhere. And the sharp edges, they do not like to crawl over these, so that will keep them away from your little tender plants from getting all over them. And another way is actual organic slug bait. You can find this, and I'll show you what that looks like in a bag in most stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, garden stores, those kind of things. And another way to combat them is to put beer in an upside down cap of a jar and just pour a little beer in there and set it on the surface just and push it down just a little bit so the slugs can crawl in there. They're attracted by the yeast, and that'll make their stomachs blow up and stop eating, and they'll die. So that's another way to take care of slugs. You may also come across leaves that look like they have little trails running through them, like little squiggly marks, little white ones. Don't panic, these are called leaf miners. They're very small pests that get in between the little layers of the leaves, and you can kill them by squeezing the leaves together and it will crush them, or you can spray for it. But a lot of times I don't treat them because it will not kill your plant unless it really gets out of control and it's going all over every single leaf of your plant, or a good portion of it. I generally will leave it alone if it's just hitting a couple leaves, because it won't affect the overall harvest you get. But if you do need to spray, spinosad or pyrethrin, soak the leaves. Some people use BT because it's larvae, or you can do a combination of all three. But they are hard to get to because they are inside the leaf. So sometimes I'll just pull off the worst ones, like the worst leaf, and then I'll just leave it be, unless, like I said, it gets out of hand and then you have to treat it. So then you can spray with one of those other treatments. And sometimes you'll see your squash all of a sudden looking like limp, and something got to it overnight, and pretty much that will be the squash vine borer. They get to the vine, the main part of the vine of the squash, and they dig around in there and they lay their eggs and their larvae, and you'll see the telltale signs. It looks like little crumbly gold, almost like breadcrumbs gathered in one spot, and that's the feces from the larvae as they eat from the inside of your plant. And these will devastate your plant. If I see those, sometimes if I can get it right away, I will inject BT into the actual vine, or I'll just spray it on top and into wherever the hole is. You'll see the hole where they entered in, and try to get it that way. But a lot of times once it's in there, your plant's a goner. So how I kind of get around this is I tend to plant more than I need. If I think I need 3 squash plants, I will plant 6, and I'll put a couple in one area and a couple in a different area. So if some of them get to a couple of the plants, then I can, take those plants out, and I still have other ones as backup in a different area of the garden. So that tends to work for me until it gets really buggy and pesty in the summer, and then I just pull all the plants. A lot of times I'll have one squash plant like inside here, or in the greenhouse as you see back there. But it's kind of crowded in that little greenhouse. So a lot of times I'll put it in a little planter, as you see this squash plant right here. And just so I have a little bit of squash still coming in at a certain point. But otherwise, and I'll hand pollinate with a little paintbrush. I'll hand pollinate, but for the most part, I just usually will, this time of year, as the squash get attacked, then I'll just pull the plant for the season, and I'll start again in the fall. Also, companion planting is extremely helpful. It has helped me tremendously with my Roma tomatoes, which kind of are my pet project, because I like to get tons of tomatoes to be able to make sauce and stewed tomatoes and can and all those kind of things. So I intersperse garlic chives and marigold flowers and nasturtiums to attract bugs to that pest, so they'll leave my tomatoes alone. And for the most part, I really have not had a lot of bugs attacking my tomatoes at all. At least I'm in the end of June almost, and I haven't had too much of a problem. Most of my problem this year with my Roma tomatoes has been with fungus. So my previous video, I showed you how to treat for that, and that's been my nemesis this year. But interplanting with plants that bugs don't like or that throws off the scents, usually strong scented plants that they don't like, kind of throws them off the scent of the really good stuff that you want to keep and you don't want them to attack. So it really has helped me a lot. I also have installed a little bee house in the back of my raised beds, and the little tiny bees live in there. That helps a lot because they're buzzing all around my garden. So they're picking up pests and little bugs and eating them, and they're pollinating. And so I would really suggest that you get one of those. And it seems to work great in my garden. You can find those on Amazon. So sometimes you get a really nice squash or really nice pepper and nice and sweet, and you want to keep that for yourself and you don't want any bugs attacking it. I would suggest putting mesh bags around them and tying them, and none of the bugs can get to it. With tomatoes, I find the smaller Romas, so the ripeness that is just starting to blush is when you can take those tomatoes off your vine. Leaf-footed bugs, they will get to your tomatoes. If you don't want that to happen, a lot of times you can take them early. They've already at this stage gotten what they need from the mother plant, and they will be just as sweet and they will ripen just as well on your kitchen counter, and now you've avoided all the problems of the bugs attacking them. So that's another way around it. So I find another solution to the pest problem is I have lots of plants outside in the garden with no protection, and then I have some that I have in a protected, screened in area. Whether you have a back porch or a little greenhouse, or you have a net that you throw over a tomato cage, any kind of protection, because tomatoes and peppers, all of them can be pollinated by hand. Just by taking your hand like this, it will vibrate them enough for the male pollen to drop onto the female part of the flower, and it will pollinate them. If you just don't want to battle the pests, or you feel like they're winning, and sometimes they do, I have some out here inside my greened area, and I also have a few inside the tomatoes inside that little greenhouse over there. Just a little container, as you see. If you just don't want to deal with it, or you're having a hard time with pests, spraying and keeping track of all that, then you can put a net over them and just hand pollinate. Another way around the pests in the summertime is just not having conventional plants out in your garden, trying to find varieties that are more tropical and that are more resistant to the heat, the humidity, the bugs, the this, the that, the whatever. Egyptian spinach is a good option. Tastes a lot like spinach. It loves the heat. It can take the tropics here, and we get some pretty severe storms. And so can Seminole pumpkins. They love the heat. And sweet potatoes are great this time of year. I have a video that I show you how to plant the slip and how to put them in and care for them. Very easy. They love the heat. And also, a lot of people like to grow okra this time of year. That's handles the heat really well. I have some Everglades tomatoes. They love the heat and they can handle all of it, and they are native basically to Florida, and they're little tiny tomatoes, but I pluck those things off and I pop them in a salad, or I collect them and freeze them. They have such good potent flavor. They're delicious. So they are slow to germinate. They take about 3 weeks from seed. But once they do germinate, the plants will take off, and it's a one-time thing. You plant them and you'll have them forever. So in my next video, I'm going to show you how to plant Seminole pumpkin seeds and care for them, and show you how quickly they can grow. And they're very easy if you just do a few things at the beginning, and you have plenty of space to grow. They're the perfect thing. They taste a lot like butternut squash. Those are a great option. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and hopefully you don't feel alone with your battle of pests in the garden, because we're all in this together. I appreciate you joining me, and until next time, go out and make yourself a great day.